want to introduce you all to Paul Rubenstein now. He's the Chief People Officer at Visier, which is a people analytics and workplace planning software company. And his company has done some recent research on Gen Z, particularly on the questions of burnout and mental health, as Christine was alluding to. Paul, what can you tell us about that?
Sure, Heather. Thanks for that. Like the funniest thing that struck me when we did this study is how marketing titled it. I loved it, right? When vacations aren't enough, right? Our people, I fight with our employees to take vacation. It's incredible. We have this very generous policy, and I find myself begging people to go take vacations, and even, their sabbaticals, like, oh, I'm too busy to take time off. And I'm in this argument over like, well, athletes rest. Athletes know the importance of rest. Part of showing up to work is making sure you're rested. So it's an interesting struggle. And that'll play out in the data in a very interesting way. Burnout is up, right? You don't need my data to tell you that, right? You see it, you feel it, you experience it, it's valid. What's interesting in the survey is it's higher for younger workers, for Gen Z and millennials, right? And 70% of them, like Christine said, they're willing to walk. They're willing to walk if they think they can go someplace that makes them feel less burnt out. And when we started to peel back the onion on burnout, it was workload, right? More so than any other generation, the Gen Z is seeing the biggest driver of their burnout is workload, more work than they had during the pandemic. Interesting to tease that out. Is that because there's nothing else to do? Is it because we don't have commute? Is it because it's just easy to stay on the same screen that you're gaming on, to do your work and you never leave that environment? I don't know. Even like you get beyond the research, I talked to, younger employees who are at home with their sister in one room, their adult sister in one room, their parents in another room, all four working from home in a 3-bedroom apartment. Maybe they're working to avoid each other. I don't know, but like I see some very strange behaviors happening. And then, we talked about we go into work-life balance, and I think the link is in, for anybody who wants it, I think the link is in the chat. What else is driving? People talked about being asked to take on more work, right? That was the #1 driver. Other things showed up, but not as much as being asked to take on more work. Toxic workplace, complete work faster, being excessively micromanaged. I think this is an interesting element that shows the gap in how a gap in trust, right? A lot of people walk around to see how people are managed. I can see you at your desk. I know you're working. Well, in this environment, it requires a high trust. So do people revert to a higher degree of control and micromanaging? I worry about that. The other thing that struck me as funny in the report is employees feel the burden of addressing their burnout falls squarely on their shoulders, not their employers. And this surprised me. 73% said it was their responsibility versus 27% saying it was their employers. And they're not talking to their managers. 50% of them reported that they didn't feel comfortable talking to their managers because they felt being seen as incapable of doing their job. Like how often, and are we creating an environment where somebody says, hey, I'm struggling, I need help? I remember when I was a young consultant, I had a senior manager tell me once, the worst crime you can commit is not raising your hand to say you're in trouble loud enough and early enough. And that there's a stigma against that. And that just sort of breaks my heart a bit. And then, of course, the study also showed that this definitely impacts women and caregivers. And the last thing that stuck out in the study for me was around disconnecting. Even those who reported going on vacation said they weren't fully able to disconnect. I worry that, if you pick up your device and you're gonna, it's so easy to swipe from Instagram to your work email to back and forth. What is, the personal responsibility to disconnect and detox? It's huge. And it's important for managers to model the behavior and encourage that behavior.